Queen of the Ring. As with any review, this may contain spoilers. Happy World Teachers Day. I came into the movie with a lot of positivity because the trailer looked good and I'm a fan of pro wrestling. I'm not as familiar with women's wrestling, so I thought this could teach me something about one of the pioneers in women's wrestling and the wrestling industry in the 1930s to 1950s. Unfortunately, I did not like the film and it was a struggle to get through. Based on a true story, the film chronicles the life of female wrestler Mildred Burke, played by Emily Bette Rickards, who looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place where. Then I learned she played Felicity Smoke in the TV series Arrow. We follow Mildred in her early 20s, I believe, already a single mother and working as a waitress in a small town. She attends a wrestling match and falls in love with the sport. Billy Wolf, played by Josh Lucas, is one of the wrestlers she saw at the show and she convinces him to train her. After proving her worth, Mildred and Billy toured and performed at carnivals where she would wrestle men who paid a fee. With Billy as her promoter and later husband, Mildred won and held the NWA World Women's Championship for almost 20 years. Before I get into why I didn't like the film, let me touch on some of the things that I did enjoy. For those unfamiliar with wrestling terms, it was good that the movie explained what a heel and babyface are. We also learned what a shoot is in those early days of wrestling. The movie explains that a shoot is a match that is unscripted and isn't performed in front of a crowd with the intent to determine a winner for their upcoming match. The moves performed during the shoot are legitimate takedowns with the intent to submit the opponent and be declared the winner. A shoot is done when the wrestlers and promotions can't agree on the outcome of the match. For example, a shoot could be done when the exchange of the women's world title is disagreed upon. I want to say that a shoot in today's wrestling means something different. I'm pretty sure it's not the same as it was back then. I mentioned in the synopsis of the story that Mildred performed in carnivals. That was one of the few ways women were able to wrestle back in those days. Wrestling was seen as a man's sport and women were not taken as serious wrestlers and were only seen as sideshows. Sexism that women wrestlers had to endure, such as not being able to wrestle in certain states, was shown, but the film showed that aspect in a very inoffensive way. You didn't feel the weight of the hardships the women wrestlers had to go through to participate in a sport that they loved. This was especially true when women of color wrestlers appeared in the movie. There was only one scene where there was backlash to the promotion and the women for being black. The cast, for the most part, was good. I enjoyed Emily as Mildred, and she put off the physicality of the role well. Someone I thought of immediately who could have also played Mildred is Katie M. O'Brien. She played a bodybuilder in the movie Love Lies Bleeding. She's a little taller than Emily, and from some of the pictures I've seen, looks a little bit more like Mildred than Emily does. That being said, I didn't have a problem with Emily playing the title role. There's a love interest angle between George William Wolfe, the son of Billy Wolfe, played by Tyler Posey, and Mildred that I didn't like. I'm going to assume that happened in real life, but what the movie did with it was nothing. It provided nothing to the story, there was no intrigue or suspense, and honestly, it should have been left off the final edit. The aging was also poorly done. While Mildred's son aged in the film, everyone else in the cast did not. The biggest issue I had with the movie by far was the dialogue and direction. No offense to the filmmakers, but the film looked and felt like a Hallmark movie. It didn't feel or look low budget, but it didn't have a cinematic look, if that makes sense. The dialogue was poor. It didn't flow. There can be a few factors involved in dialogue issues, and this seems to suffer from all of them. One is that the writing is just bad. Another could be that the delivery of the words from the actors could also come out wrong, and this film had both. I don't have a specific line that made me feel this way. It was the overall dialogue that made me cringe at times. Every decade has its own slang words, and I have no doubt that the ones used in the story were told in those days. However, the way they came out from the actors didn't come across as authentic. Every time Josh Lucas said the words tuts, it sounded weird and off-putting. With the dialogue and direction not working for me, the movie came off as almost a parody of a movie. I'm not sure how else to explain it. Something else that made me have negative feelings towards the film was the spousal abuse and how it was dealt with. I don't know if the book The Queen of the Ring, Sex, Muscles, Diamonds, and the Making of American Legend, and Mildred's memoir that this movie is based upon go into detail about the spousal abuse, but it felt like the filmmakers would make an excuse for Billy's behavior and chalk it up to him losing control for a minute, but in reality, that's not who he is. They portrayed him in a sympathetic and apologetic manner when he would not only hit Mildred, but also Mildred's son and his own son. On a lighter note, there are a number of actual pro wrestling wrestling cameos, but because I'm not as familiar with women's wrestling, the only cameo that I recognized right away was Naomi, who wrestles in WWE. After watching the movie, I learned that there are cameos from AEW wrestlers such as Toni Storm, Camille, and Britt Baker, but because I don't follow those promotions as I do with WWE, I wasn't familiar with who they were. Overall, I was looking forward to the movie, but was left disappointed. However, that doesn't mean you wouldn't enjoy it and it may be worth watching. If you stuck around this long, why not give the video a like, try it out, see if it works, subscribe, check out my other videos, leave a comment, let me know what you think of the film. See you in the next review.